So thank you both so much for joining me today. I was hoping we could just start with a brief background of nanobiotics and specifically looking at the MBTXR3 agent. What kind of potential do you see with that regarding head and neck treatment moving forward, Laurent?
So maybe we should just talk a little about what is NBTXR3 first and where nanobiotics is coming from. We started this company with the idea that instead of using chemistry or biology to treat cancer, maybe we should try another way, another path. That's why we decided to use physics, and we decided to bring physics into the cell to make sure we can have a treatment that could benefit potentially millions of patients. That's what led us to invent NBTXR3, which should be a first-in-class that is made to be combined with radiation therapy and made also to be injected only once into a tumor. And once it's injected, then a patient can receive the usual radiation therapy. And this product is made to absorb the energy of radiation and to deliver a higher dose within the tumor only, and to create much more damage that could destroy the cancer cell and destroy the tumor, but also could trigger some immune response linked to that.
And so specifically looking at the phase 3 NanoRay 312 trial, it looks at MBTXR3 activated by radiation therapy with or without cetuximab. I was hoping you could talk about how MBTXR3 potentially enhances the effect with this cetuximab plus radiotherapy being the standard of care for certain head and neck subtypes.
Maybe I'll take this, Laurent, and then you can add on to it. I just wanted to echo some of the things that Laurent already mentioned. I mean, I'm a physician. I treat patients, and there are things that we commonly do, which is chemotherapy and now immunotherapy, and targeted therapies. But NBTXR3, or these nanoparticles, is very different. It's completely different. It's an out-of-the-box approach. And when I first heard about it, I thought it was a little crazy, actually, because it's so different from what we usually do. And I had to read up on hafnium oxide, and it has apparently really strong properties and is used in physics, in lasers, etc. And but then it was very interesting when I saw what it actually does biologically, because no other agent does it. So it's like a local radiation enhancer. And when I treat patients with radiation, and that gets us to the question, the problem is you can only do so much radiation because there are side effects from the radiation. So every time you use radiation, you kill some tumor cells and you damage some normal cells. And so there's a limit, because the radiation doesn't just go into the tumor, but it also goes to the normal tissue. So if you have a local radiation, that's great. And some people have tried to do that with like radioactive seeds, but it's limited in its applicability. So I was very intrigued by that. The second point is it has this very intriguing immunotherapy effect that really got me. So those are the 2 points where I said, this is a bit crazy, but it looks really promising. I think it's worth a try. One of those high risk, high payoff things. And now we've seen some really interesting data, so I'm even more excited. Sorry for the long-winded intro, but but for the phase 3 study, I think when you develop a new agent, you go into an unmet need, and a large unmet need are patients that have no good options or are intolerant to regular chemotherapy plus radiation, which is the standard of care. And so that's where this phase 3 trial has an opportunity to bring NBTXR3 to the market. And I'm happy to talk more about it, but I thought I'll just start with that.
I think maybe if I can add on head and neck and some other indication, that's one of the parts where we think our product could have a good impact for patient, where you have a locally advanced tumor and limited options, and where you can, by having a better local control, improve quality of life of the patient and increase survival. So that's really where we think there is a huge potential in locally advanced tumor, and head and neck for some of the patients is really one of this tumor.
Yeah, I treat head and neck cancer, obviously, almost exclusively. And, this is a good indication for injectable agent because these tumors are accessible for injection. It doesn't mean that you can't inject, the lung or other organs. In principle, every body part is reachable with a needle. but it's a nice disease to start with. I mean, I don't expect that NBTXR3, when it's active, would only be limited to head and neck cancer, but it's a great starting point. So local regional advanced head and neck cancer is good to inject. Radiation is a key, treatment component, so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and to echo that, we also running trial in lung cancer, in pancreatic cancer, in soft tissue sarcoma, in many other indications where local injection is actually the best path to bring such agent into patients.
And so kind of, I just wanted to bring up another trial that kind of information was presented at the ASTRO annual meeting, the phase 1 trial. I'll extend this question to both of you, but could you detail some of the results? And specifically, there was if I understand correctly, the company gave its global development plan. It gave updates on that as well. So could we talk a little bit about those and how this data compare with those of other available therapies? And does this offer a significant advantage over what's currently available?
Matthew, just to be clear, you're talking about which data? Because we've been presenting a number. So is it about the immuno-oncology trial we've been running?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Maybe Dr. Seiwert, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So
that?
I had the same question. I wasn't sure which trial.
I apologize.
No problem.
Sure. If I may give a long-winded answer one more time, but you can cut it down if later on.
Absolutely.
So I was involved in the early, idea of combining it with immunotherapy, and it was an interesting, it was in the hallway conversation, and I saw the sarcoma data. Somebody from Nanobiotics came up to me and said, sarcomas, are very radiorefractory. They don't do well with radiation, and this makes them more sensitive. And I was like, well, that's nice. It's not really what I care about that much, but it's probably a good thing to do. But then there was a second thought, which was, and sarcomas have no general immune response. PD-1 inhibitors don't really work well. I mean, there's very few exceptions in sarcomas. But it seemed like that, the data that was generated alongside the clinical data suggested that there was a strong immune effect. And that's where I really got interested, because then it's not just a radio enhancer, which by itself is actually valuable, but then it opens the entire space of, immuno-oncology and combinations with PD-1 and refractory tumors, that are probably not good PD-1 targets. And so the second question then was, after looking at the data, what would you do, to prove this? And I said, you go into the toughest disease, you go into patients that are radiorefractory and that have failed anti-PD-1. And that's exactly what the data you're referring to is about. This is a trial that looks at patients who are refractory to either radiation or anti-PD-1 immunotherapy. And so these are really tough patients. But at the same time, the hope is that, as we see activity there, it becomes very quickly exciting. And, the early data that we saw and that you're referencing it's a small data set. So I don't want to overstate, the impact, but it was very intriguing. There's this thing called an abscopal effect where, you treat one lesion, but the lesions that are not treated start responding. It's a classic feature of immunotherapy. It's quite rare. In fact, I have never seen an abscopal effect in the whatever many years I've used immuno-oncology agents. But in this trial, there was at least one clear one and maybe a second one that suggests that maybe this is actually an agent that does this. And I saw it very intriguing. Again, small numbers, and we should, increase the number. Also, if you take the general, sense of the data, it seemed like this agent was quite effective. Again, we need more data, but it was intriguing at both overcoming radiation resistance as well as patients who had failed anti-PD-1 and then these abscopal effects. So again, we look forward to more data, but it was certainly very, very intriguing to see activity in patients who otherwise don't do well.
That's something we really like about this product. Obviously, it's our product, we like it, but what we like about it is really, it's something which is tumor agnostic. Because of the physical mode of action, you can destroy any type of cancer cell in combination with radiation. So you have this primary mode of action that will destroy the cancer cell and will offer some local control. What we did measure also is by destroying the tumor, you also release a number of messages, specific messages that allow the immune system to get equipped against the tumor. And the immune system is not limited to the local treatment, it's going across the body. So if you have distant metastases or distant lesions, then the immune system can take care of that too. So it's really a unique agent where you have a local approach that triggers a systemic approach too.
I mean, there's something about the way NBTXR3 plus radiation kills a tumor cell that seems to be very different from regular radiation. And at least some of the data, and Laurent, you can correct me, suggests that there's activation of STING,
Sure.
CGAS STING pathway, which is one of the interesting, pathways currently being explored for immunotherapy. And, it may be different, but certainly there's a mechanism behind it that actually might explain the activity.
So I guess taking into consideration all of this information and data that you've seen thus far with this agent, how is that, kind of leading you or determining what next steps you take at Nanobiotics? And then Dr. Seiwert, how, if it has already, how is that determining, what treatment or how you start to treat patients with head and neck cancer? And if it hasn't yet, how do you anticipate it will?
Do you want to start?
Sure. It's too early. I mean, I think right now what I think we have to say is this is an interesting novel agent and novel mechanism of action, with the early data looking very intriguing. I mean, this agent has a track record now for sarcoma, for soft tissue sarcoma, and has an approval in Europe, I believe, as a device. But those data are randomized data, and so that for me went a long way. For head and neck cancer in the US, I think the phase 3 study that you pointed out, that would be a path to approval. Right now, for me to practice, I really like this agent. I think there is again a lot of signs of early signal. But for me, practically speaking, right now, that means that I really prioritize this trial, and I advertise, I talk about it, and hopefully the study will enroll and we'll have more interesting data. Yeah, I think this is a question of drug development, but as a physician or investigator, it's one of these agents that I prioritize.
And from a development perspective, on our side, we will be happy when we can help millions of patients. And to do that, we need to make sure that this product is working well in different situations. So we have this head and neck path, which is very important. And the phase 3 is where we put a lot of attention and resources. But it's not the only thing we do. We have, for example, this large collaboration with MD Anderson Cancer Center, where they're developing 9 clinical trials around that number to make sure we can spread the use of this product across different indications. But we have different type of help we could provide to the patient. For locally advanced tumor, we could improve the local control and help the patient to have local benefit and longer survival and better quality of life. For patients that have a systemic disease with metastasis, we have our path with the immuno-oncology, where we could try to help the patient to get less metastasis, to get less tumor burden, and to improve also survival and quality of life. There's still a number of patients that are cured with radiation. It's a very powerful technology. Nevertheless, you always have some or a lot side effect depending on which situation linked to the use of radiation. So for the patients that are cured, what we could do is also give our product on the top of radiation and allow a reduction of dose of radiation to diminish the side effect to the patient. But that's a longer term, because to demonstrate that will require a lot of attention in the clinical trial. But that's also a path we would like to take.
Mm-hmm. So then I guess taking a step back and looking at the wider picture here, I'll start with you, Dr. Seiwert. How do you see the field of head and neck cancer really evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? And I guess on a separate note, what role will NBTXR3 play in that evolution in your mind?
Yeah, so I think we are in the era of immuno-oncology right now. I think that NBTXR3 has a good chance of playing a role for the treatment immunotherapy treatments for head and neck cancer, but I also think that's not head and neck specific. I think if it works in one disease, immunotherapy would likely then apply to other diseases, that have immunotherapy benefits. So NBTXR3 would apply. So I think there's a large opportunity with that immunotherapy side profile. I think what Laurent mentioned, I also appreciate. Radiation has side effects and limited. There's a therapeutic window that's not that broad. And NBTXR3, because it's a localized radiation, may be able to have a much better therapeutic ratio, because if it's just local, then you don't cause the side effects. So I think there are really two opportunities. I think it would be very nice, if the phase 3 study shows, demonstrates the activity it's a single agent. It's just radiation plus NBTXR3, and I use them as one treatment really. But the sky's the limit after that. So once you have that, you can say, we can combine it with other standard of care, whether it's chemotherapy, we can combine it with immunotherapy. So I think that first step is very important. Once that's done, I think the floodgates will open, and then many, many other concepts will be able to be done. It's essentially a proof of concept right now.
And Laurent, I'll extend the same question to you. How do you see the field evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? And then, I guess, more broadly speaking, what role will nanobiotics play in kind of pushing the field forward?
Well, we hope we're going to play a large role in that. For us, we have always two things in mind: to try to cure better the patients that are not cured, and to try to improve quality of life. Because that's very important those days, we think, to not only offer a cure potentially, but to help patients to get better and to go back to life and have something that they can forget. So that's our goal at Nano.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, I'll extend kind of this broad question for both of you, and feel free to take this anyway. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned regarding this agent or the field or nanobiotics that you feel is really important to share in this space?
Maybe I will say that physics, or at least bringing physics at the cellular level, it's for us a new way of treating patients. And we started with cancer, and our goal now at Nano is to also move beyond cancer and start looking at other type of disease where physics could have an impact.
Great. I'm very biased, Laurent. I think if you cure cancer, that would be great. But anyway, sorry. No, but obviously that was a bit, joking. What I'm very intrigued about is that this is a novel mechanism of action. Going back to what I said at the beginning, this is different from anything we've done. And so I think it's really important to understand what it actually does. I think we have glimpses of the immune effect, we have glimpses of the radiation effect, but actually understanding something, if you have something that works, you want to study it, because there's so much opportunity to apply it broader or, improve upon it too. So I think I'm excited about, the future.